You gotta love them. You gotta love them. That's how I responded when one of my friends was kind of commenting on some of my other friends. My response was simply, you gotta love them. Because my friend noticed I have a very eclectic collection of friends. They're all over the place. I know they're all over the place because once I made the mistake of having together some of my friends in the same place at the same time, and I discovered you really don't want to bring together rabid Republicans and demonic Democrats, or however you put them. I mean, it was just like, oh my goodness gracious. You bring them at the same table and they just kind of become possessed. And it's like, wait a minute. I love Republicans and I love Democrats and I love Beavers fans and I love Ducks fans and I love, the reality is that's my friends. It's a very diverse collection of friends. And I've just learned the best thing to do in life is you got to love them. You gotta love them. And sometimes it's not easy. I don't always agree with what they believe. I don't always like the way they act. I'm not always into their attitudes. I mean, one of my most difficult to love friends is someone who believes the whole world is against them. Have you ever bumped into someone like that? The whole world is against them. Well, the reality is that's an awful lot of enemies to have against you. An awful lot of enemies, because the reality is we're being told today to love our enemy, and the best way to start is we need to find who is our enemy. Who is our enemy? Because I find it fascinating who people consider their enemy. Like, my enemy is somebody who belongs to a different political party than I do. Or my enemy belongs to a different church than I do. Or my enemy belongs to, that's a whole lot of enemies to have. And the reality is, do we really want to live our life with having so many enemies? You see, I believe the answer is found in the truth that Jesus teaches in today's Gospel of Luke chapter 6, verse 27 to 28. Jesus said to his disciples, "To you who hear I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you." You do this, and you're going to seriously cut down your list of enemies. Really, if you do this, you're going to seriously cut down your list of enemies, because as soon as somebody seems to be an enemy in your life, stop and pray for them and see if that adjusts your attitude toward them. As soon as you consider someone an enemy, why don't you just try loving them instead? Or as soon as you're considering someone to be your enemy, bless them. It worked for me. There are some people in my life that, I think there's a good reason why I considered them my enemy. But I found that my attitude towards them changed just by praying for them, just by starting to pray for them. And that's not always easy. I must admit that for some of my enemies, the prayer that I started with was that God would take them home sooner rather than later. All right, it's like a toe in the door, okay? It's just like it's starting the process. At least I'm praying for them. And then it helps me in cutting down that list of enemies. Because we had a very great example in our first reading from the first book of Samuel. How did David treat Saul? He could have really considered him to be his enemy. I mean, Saul was only trying to kill him. But he didn't respond in kind, did he? He didn't respond in kind. And what I like, what it says in the first book of Samuel, chapter 26, verse 23, where it said very clearly, the Lord repays everyone's righteousness and faithfulness. The Lord repays everyone's righteousness and faithfulness. Jesus said in today's gospel, the measure with which you measure with will be measured back to you. So what do you want to measure out? You want to measure out hate? Do you want to measure out cursing? Do you want to I'd much rather measure out love and blessings and prayer. Because I will be honest with you, it's the most effective way to help me if maybe I need a bit of an adjustment in my life. I find that I respond much better when people love me into helping me to grow and to develop. Much more than if they curse me, because my back goes up and I get a little defensive. And so I typically don't become better, but I become even more argumentative and difficult. And if that's true with me, that I respond better to love and I respond better to blessings and definitely respond better to prayers, wouldn't others? Jesus said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The Lord repays everyone's righteousness and faithfulness. We're called to take the higher road, to respond with love. And so the reality is, stop the needless multiplication of enemies. The whole world's not against you. I'm not against you. I'm in the world. Stop escalating bad feelings and behavior. How miserable we are when we're hating people and cursing people. But how blessed we are if we're praying for people and we're blessing people and we're loving people. You see, love your enemies. Be a loving person. Bless those who curse you. Be a person of blessings. Pray for those who mistreat you. Be a person of prayer. The reality is, the best thing that anybody could say about me is, you gotta love them. And I think that's an attitude it would be good for all of us to have towards everybody else. You gotta love them. You gotta love them.